I still remember the night I told my parents I wanted to go to college. The air outside was warm and sticky with summer, the cicadas humming in the distance, as if trying to drown out the nervous thudding of my heart. I had spent months perfecting my college applications, writing essays between shifts at the cafe, praying for a miracle. And somehow I got in, an acceptance letter from one of the best computer science programs in the state. I walked into the living room clutching the envelope like it was made of gold. My father was sitting in his usual armchair, beer in hand, watching some rerun of a football game. My mother scrolled endlessly through her phone, her face lit by the cold blue glow of the screen. "Mom, Dad?" I said, barely containing my excitement. I got in. They accepted me. I'm going to college. For a heartbeat, I thought they'd be happy. Maybe even proud, but then my father laughed. A short, sharp sound that cut through the room like a knife. "College," he scoffed. "For what, Elena? You'll never use a degree. Waste of money if you ask me." I froze, my smile fading. "It's not a waste. I want to study computer science. It's a good field, there are so many opportunities." He raised a hand, silencing me. "Opportunities don't pay the bills. You need to work, not play with computers." My mother didn't even look up. "You should get a real job," she murmured, "something stable. Maybe at your uncle's hardware store. That's what smart people do." I felt the heat rise behind my eyes, a lump forming in my throat. "But I already got in. I can make it work. I just need help with tuition. Please, just this once." My father's jaw tightened. "We're not paying for something you'll never finish. You'll drop out after a semester like everyone else who thinks they're too good for real work. If you want to go, go. But don't expect a penny from us," and that was that. That night, I cried quietly in my room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how something so bright could turn so dark so fast. But somewhere between the tears and the heartbreak, a new resolve began to form. If they wouldn't believe in me, I'd believe in myself. The next morning, I got up before dawn and started calling every scholarship office I could find. I took 3 part-time jobs waitressing during the day, tutoring kids in the evenings, and cleaning offices on weekends. I barely slept, but every paycheck, every late night, felt like a step closer to freedom. There were nights when exhaustion clawed at me, when I'd sit in my dorm room, eating instant noodles, and wonder if they were right, if I was chasing something impossible. But then I'd open my laptop, stare at the glowing code on my screen, and whisper to myself, one day they'll see. When I finally packed my bags for college, neither of my parents came to see me off. My mother just said, "Don't come crying to us when it doesn't work out." I looked at her one last time, forcing a small smile. "Don't worry, Mom, I won't," and I never did. College was nothing like I imagined. The first few weeks felt like walking into another world, a world where everyone else seemed to belong. I'd show up to lectures in thrift, store jeans and secondhand sneakers, while other students wore designer clothes and drove cars that probably cost more than my tuition. Still, I refused to let it break me. I worked mornings at a cafe off campus, served coffee to the same students I sat next to in class, and studied between shifts, my textbooks stained with espresso and exhaustion. There were nights I fell asleep on my keyboard, the glow of my laptop painting my dreams in blue light. But through the fatigue, something inside me burned brighter. I wasn't just surviving, I was learning. Every line of code, every project, every late night study session felt like a rebellion against the voices that told me I'd fail. Then came Dr. Kim. She was the only professor who seemed to notice me. One day after class, she stopped me as I was packing up. "Elena," she said, "you've got something special. You don't just follow instructions, you build on them. That's rare." Her words felt like oxygen. For the first time, someone believed in me. By junior year, I was working on an idea that had been quietly growing in my mind since my first programming class. A simple platform that would help small local businesses sell their products online. My best friend, Amira, helped with design, and another classmate, Leo, handled the back-end systems. We called it NovaLink. It started small, just a student project. We'd meet in the computer lab until midnight, fueled by vending, machine coffee, and pure determination. But when we launched a prototype for a few local shops, it caught fire. Orders rolled in faster than we could manage. We weren't just coding anymore, we were building something real. Balancing it all was chaos. Between classes, jobs, and the startup, I barely had time to breathe. There were days when my hands shook from exhaustion, and my friends begged me to slow down. But I couldn't. I had spent too long being told I couldn't do it. I wasn't about to stop now. We pitched Novalink at a small entrepreneurship contest on campus. I stood on stage, wearing a blazer that didn't quite fit, my palms sweaty, my voice trembling as I told our story. When they announced that we'd won first place and a small investment grant, I cried right there in front of everyone. That moment changed everything. Investors started calling. We incorporated the company. By the time I graduated, Novalink had offices, employees, and a growing reputation. But my graduation day was bittersweet. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I scanned the crowd instinctively. Everyone else had families cheering, waving, crying. My seat in the audience was empty. Still, I smiled. Because I finally understood something. I didn't need their applause to validate my success. Every late night, every sacrifice had brought me here, and I was just getting started. As the ceremony ended and confetti rained down, I whispered to myself, they said I'd never use a degree. Guess they were wrong, and for the first time in years, I felt free. 10 years had passed since the day I walked away from home. 10 years since I'd heard my parents' voices, except in the echo of old memories. I was 29 now, CEO of Novalink, featured in business magazines, speaking at conferences, shaking hands with people who once would have never given me the time of day. Sometimes success felt surreal. My mornings began in a glass-walled office overlooking the city, my name etched on the door. The same girl who once scrubbed office floors now owned several of them. I thought I had left the past behind. Until one gray Monday morning, my assistant buzzed my office. "There's a couple here asking to see you," she said. "They say they're your parents." For a second, I couldn't breathe. My parents, after all these years? "Send them in," I managed. When they entered, time seemed to hesitate. My father looked older, his once confident shoulders now slouched, his hair streaked with gray. My mother's sharpness had softened into weariness, her eyes ringed with shadows. "Alina," my mother whispered, tears already glistening. "You look so grown." My father forced a small smile. "We're proud of you, kid. We always knew you'd make it." The words stung. They sounded rehearsed, hollow. "I didn't know you two followed the news," I said, keeping my voice steady. My father sighed, rubbing his hands together. "We made some bad choices. The business went under. Then the house, it's all gone. The bank's threatening foreclosure. We just need a little help to get back on our feet." My mother leaned forward, gripping my hand. "You've done so well, sweetheart. 5 million would cover everything. Just a loan. We'll pay you back. 5 million. I felt my heart twist. The same people who once laughed at my dreams were now begging for money I had built from those very dreams. I studied them for a moment. The lines on their faces told stories of regret, fear, and maybe a hint of shame. But beneath it all, I still saw the same prideful people who had once told me I'd never make it. 5 million is a lot, I said softly. My father's tone hardened slightly. "You have more than enough. It's time you remembered who raised you." The words cut deeper than I expected. Raised me. I thought of all those nights I went hungry so I could pay tuition. The times I cried in silence because I had no one to call. "I'll think about it," I said quietly, standing up. "That's all I can promise." They nodded, pretending gratitude, but I could feel the disappointment simmering beneath their forced smiles. That night, I sat alone in my penthouse, city lights flickering below like distant stars. I poured myself a glass of wine and stared at my reflection. I had everything I once dreamed of: success, freedom, respect, but suddenly it all felt heavy. Because the people I once loved most were now strangers asking for a price tag, I couldn't put on forgiveness. And I realized something painfully simple. Money could rebuild houses, but not trust. A week passed before I called them again. In that time, I barely slept. Every night, I lay awake replaying their words from years ago. My father's laughter when I told him about college. My mother's cold silence as I begged for help. Now the roles were reversed. I stared at my reflection in the window, the city lights glowing behind me. I wasn't the scared girl who left home with a suitcase and a dream anymore. I was a woman who had built her world from the ashes of rejection. When I finally picked up the phone, my voice was steady. "Mom, Dad, can you come by the office tomorrow? I've made a decision." They arrived early, dressed in their best clothes. My father in a worn suit, my mother clutching a designer handbag that still bore its store tag. They looked nervous, hopeful, desperate. We sat across from each other in the sleek conference room. Sunlight streamed through the windows, glinting off the polished table between us. My father leaned forward. "So, what did you decide?" I took a breath. "I've decided what to do with the 5 million. My mother's face brightened instantly. "Oh, sweetheart, thank you. We knew you wouldn't let your family down." I held her gaze. "I'm donating it." Silence. "Donating?" my father repeated slowly. "Yes," I said, "to a scholarship fund, for students whose parents refuse to pay for their education." My mother blinked as if she hadn't heard me correctly. "You can't be serious. You'd rather give money to strangers than help your own parents." I nodded calmly. "Strangers believed in me when you didn't. They gave me scholarships, advice, and kindness. You gave me doubt." My father's face flushed red. "After everything we did for you, food, a roof, clothes, you owe us." I met his eyes. "You gave me survival. I gave myself everything else." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "This is how you repay us, with humiliation." I didn't flinch. "No." I said softly, "This is how I end the cycle. No one else should have to beg the people who are supposed to love them most." For a moment, I thought my mother might cry, but instead, she just shook her head and whispered, "You've changed." I smiled faintly. "That's what happens when you grow." They left without another word. I watched from the window as they walked across the parking lot, two small figures shrinking into the sunlight. The next week, the Elena Rivera Foundation was officially launched. We funded hundreds of students, kids with big dreams and small bank accounts, kids who had been told they'd never use a degree. At the scholarship ceremony, I stood on stage surrounded by them. One girl hugged me and said, "You changed my life." I smiled and told her, "No, you changed your own. I just opened the door." When the applause faded, I felt something lift inside me. Not triumph, not revenge, something softer. Peace, because I finally understood. The sweetest revenge isn't about proving others wrong. It's about living so fully, so freely, that their words can never touch you again. And as I looked out over those hopeful faces, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. They said I'd never use a degree. Now it's building futures.